Hello everybody, I'm Joanne Haigh. Welcome to Face It and Fix It on CBC TV 8, YouTube, and of course, Facebook. Now before I introduce our guests, I want to share some thoughts, some things that have been on my mind personally and nationally, and it's healthcare. Again, I know I've spoken about it before, but I don't think we can talk about it enough. The elderly in this country, of course, you know, we're told, you know, once a man and twice a child, and we ask children and people to be respectful and to help them. But I see that in this country, we're not doing all of the things that we should in order to help them, and in particular in areas of health care. And it has just been my experience for the last couple of days how much is required when you are looking after a loved one, a grandmother, an aged, older mother, in terms of, some of you may be saying, but my mom is 50, but she's not old. But certainly people who are suffering from some of these horrible NCDs. So I just wanted to share that perhaps those of us who are in my age, and maybe the producer's age, and you know, we're like in our 50s or 60s, it may be too late for us to change our lifestyles, but it's not too late for you younger folks. Kidney disease is horrible, diabetes is horrible, heart disease is horrible, and it hurts me to see persons going through treatment and medication and so many tablets. So I'm hopeful that one of the problems that we can fix, and not necessarily a government problem, this is a problem that starts with all of us, is to make sure that you look after yourselves as best as you can, exercise and eat the right foods, because when you don't, and then you're faced with situations like you're told that you have diabetes, and then on top of that, your kidneys are no longer functioning, you have heart disease, and then you have to depend on your children, and then you're hoping that your children pull together. And in some cases with people who don't have a big family, especially if it's like a one child, having to look after that elderly person, it is so hard. And I think that you should put plans in place as to how you can best look after that person. So that's on my mind because I've said before, my mom is not well. She's 80 and so many comorbidities, and it's an eye-opener for me what is required to look after people when they're sick, and you must have a plan in order to help them. So I wanted to share that with you on a personal level, on a national level, the things that we need to do. The QEH hospital, I know that they're trying their best, but it is very scary when you have to go into a hospital and the waiting time is so long, and your grandmother and your aunt or your uncle, they're old, and then you feel like if nobody's looking at them because they're old, you know, and that may not necessarily be true, but in a hospital that is overwhelmed with so many people and problems and accidents and all these different things, I can see how one would feel sitting down with little granny and, you know, nobody not looking at her, and you would feel as if, you know what, she lived her life, like give somebody else a chance, type of thing, you know, type of thing. So avoid it. Let's try to live healthy and avoid these NCDs. On another note, on my mind, I was driving down Warren's, coconut vendors. I love you. We love our coconut water. But good gosh, all of the coconuts in the road. I actually saw a guy chop the coconut. He dropped it on the ground. It rolled across the highway, and a car had to swerve off of it. And lucky for him, there was nobody in the inner lane because he would hit somebody. So you got to be careful, and I'm looking forward to government's intervention in making sure that the vendors are taken care of in a better way and a safer way. Because if a car, God forbid, goes off the road, loses control, then, you know, then the rest is history. And then, of course, we will see people coming and saying, well, you know, we got to pass laws and because somebody dies, and let's not wait until that happens until, you know, we can do something about it. So today, in Archives Month, we will be looking at this department, the Archives Department. It may not be a sexy agency, as we all know, and it is probably the most least known. It's not NCF and tourism, etc., and a lot of people don't know exactly what they do. and the critical information that they have. So basically, we will be featuring them, and as I am understanding it, they have began this whole journey in this agency since 1965, and we will be speaking to them about the old records and how they're preserving it, and we're talking about digitizing in this age. What are they doing? How important is this department? And what are the challenges that they may need to face so that they can fix it to better serve people in this country? So joining us to discuss that is Chief Archivist Ingrid Thompson, and this is the third Friday in the month, and as promised, we will be speaking to members of the Barbados Council for the Disabled, and of course we are looking at multiple sclerosis, and I know a lot of you may not know what this is, but we will hear more about it as we put disabilities on the front burner from President of the Multiple Sclerosis Association, Maria Holder Small. So again, as promised, we're putting the disabilities on the front burner, and we know, as was announced recently, that the Committee on Disabilities will start June 1st for a period of 6 months, and they will be reviewing all of the policies to bring to Parliament so we can make sure that our members, the most vulnerable people in our society, are looked after. It's GCF Friday today, and you know what that means. Talk about climate change and the environment. And today, Professor Dr. Maya TROTZ, professor in the Department of Civil Environmental Engineering College of Florida. We also have engineering, my apologies, at the University of South Florida. And then we have Dr. WAINELLA Isaacs, PhD graduate, Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering, College of Engineering, University of South Florida. Also joining us, GCF National Project Coordinator, Caribbean Community Climate Change Center 5Cs, none other than Dr. ELON CADOGAN, and you know him from previous shows. And we also have Dr. Kirk Douglas, Director of the Center of Biosecurity Studies, Cayfield Campus, UWI. Now, a lot of names, a lot of titles, and you can tell that these guys, they know what they're talking about. They've studied about it, the environment, climate change, all of the projects that you're going to hear about in weeks to come. They will share all of that information with us. Remember, you can contact us by calling 228-5562 or 228-5563, or you can WhatsApp us by sending that message to 228-5562, or join us on social media. Type in CBC Barbados and leave your comments there. And before I forget, and I know that I said a couple of days ago that we will be giving away some trees. If the producer can put up on the screen a couple of the trees, call the show. Throughout the show, we will be giving away a dwarf lime tree. I believe we have bay leaf. I think we also have a golden apple tree. And these are dwarf trees and seedless for the lime trees. Call us 228-5562 or 228-5563, in particular during this segment of GCF, because we also want to talk about food security. Want to bring back that whole concept of backyard planting and farming for those who may not be doing it. And me personally, I think that every Bajan should have a breadfruit tree and a lime tree, if nothing else, in your backyard. So we are going to give away these trees every other Friday, all throughout hurricane season. Call the show, and you will have to pick it up at the plant store, New Horizon store at Sky Mall. But we will talk more about that during the show. When we come back, we will be joined by Ingrid Thompson, Chief Archivist, Department of Archives, after the break. Welcome back to Face It and Fix It. Our first guest is Ingrid Thompson. She is the Chief Archivist, Department of Archives. Now, most of you listening think that, okay, what does that have to do with facing things and fixing things? I want you to listen to how important this department is, and then we will get into that discussion, some of the challenges and what needs to be fixed. Good morning, Ms. Thompson. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, I'm Joyanne, and good morning to our viewers, and thank you for the invitation.
Okay, so let's perk everybody up right now by telling them, because people hear about archives and they're thinking that's old and that's past me and no interest. Exactly, a brief history about the department, what it does, and its role.
Well, our department is responsible for preserving historical records of not only the government but the people of Barbados, public records and private records. We were actually started in 1964, but
64.
in 1965, yeah, 64. But in 1965, we started our research room service where persons can come in and actually conduct research. Within our department, we have four sections. We have research services where you can come in and conduct research. We have our digitization unit where we're currently digitizing our records. We also have our conservation section where the records are actually repaired. And we also have records management. So we do a lot more than just store old musty records that as people believe in relation to our department. And we do have, in terms of our programming, we do outreach and so on. We have our genealogy program and things like that.
So other departments and other agencies would do the same. For example, you're not connected to anything to do with the hospital and their old records. They would digitize their own. And is it other agencies involved? And how many?
Well, right now we're just doing our own records. I know some departments and agencies have started their own digitization program, and also Ministry of Innovation and Technology, they also have a digitization program going on. But for us, we're just doing the records that we have here at the Archives Department.
And what would that include? What type of records we're talking about? Birth
Well,
certificates?
yeah, well, the earliest record that we have here is from 1636, which I think is pretty good considering that Barbados was settled in 1627. And we're looking at digitizing those early records, especially during the Atlantic slavery period. So we would have done the Barbados Mercury newspaper. Then there was a newspaper called the Barbadian. We completed our list of inventories, and we also we're now in the process of doing our wills collection. We have original wills from 1743 up to 1959. So we're in the process of doing those documents for digitization.
Wow. What does that entail when you scan them? You have to clean them? Because I remember back in the days, they tell you to make sure the documents are somewhat clean. There's, a physical action of cleaning off the documents and then having to digitize them, scan them. Is that what that entails?
Yes, part of the process, because persons assume that digitizing is just putting them on a scanner and that's it. But the records have to be first cleaned, and we use a vacuum to actually clean the records. Then we have to prepare them. For instance, the wills were folded. So in order to digitize, you have to flatten those wills. So they have to go to the conservation section and they're flattened. They go through a process of flattening these wills. And after that, they will go to the actual scanning room and have some overhead scanners. And we have technicians there. We have a group of 17 persons that we would have brought on in terms of for digitization. So they go through the process of scanning. Then after that, we have to extract the metadata from the document. So the metadata is basically information about the document. So for instance, with a will, you would want to extract the name of the person, maybe the parish where they came from, if they mention any siblings, any other family members within that will. So specific metadata we want to extract from that will. And then after that process is done, um, we have then to prepare the wills to go back into their home where they were taken from within the repository. So it's a whole process. Then we have backup. Then we have to make sure we check the images to make sure in terms of quality and so on. So Joanna is a whole set of
Well,
steps
let me
that you
tell you,
have
you
to
have
to
my
take.
mind here thinking because
Yeah.
there's so. If you're going all the
Yes.
way back to 16, you said you have records that would take you back to.
1636.
Yeah. So
1636.
when you talk
Yes.
about
And if
wills, we talking about the registry, all of the documents and where you birth certificates, everything by the courts, even cases, etc. All of those
Yes,
different things.
we do have wills. We do have wills those came from the registry. Because actual fact, when you go into records management now, and you look at the Archives Act, any record that is deemed archival or has been appraised as archival, really and truly should be transferred to the Archives Department. So anything that is 30 years or older and identified as an archival record. So yes, in the early days, these wills and these documents were transferred to the Archives Department. And even in digitization, without conservation and digitization go hand in hand. So for those early records, some of them are in a poor physical state. So we have to undergo conservation treatment of these records in order to get them digitized properly. Because as an archivist, we want to digitize and get the image as close as possible to the original document. Because if you need to, in terms of authenticity and so on, that is why we have to be very careful and the standards that we use and the processes that we use to digitize our archival records. And I want to put it out there that when you digitize the record, you do not get rid of the hard copy, because I find that that is a problem. Persons don't have places to store the original document, and they may believe that when you digitize that you get rid of the hard copy. My question is always, how long will the digital record last? Nobody has that evidence that they can give to me. So we have to make sure we preserve those hard copies, that if anything happens to the digital record, that we can still go back and maybe make a second copy or be able to consult those paper records.
All right. So the next question, so I want to be able to differentiate between people talking about streamlining information and keying in information. This is all about documents only to put into a system. What are the challenges there? So there's no hacking then and changing anything, like how we think about the whole world of technology. There's, because it's important to keep the hard copy. But
Yes.
what are some of the risks in terms of what we hear about people tampering with documents? They would not be able to do that, or can
No,
they?
they will not. No, they will not be able. They should not be able to do that. I don't want to say that they cannot, because in terms of all that technology and so on, I am not sure of what is out there and what persons are capable of. But there's certain audit trails and security features that, in using any type of software that we can use, that would help to prevent persons from tampering with those documents.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to speak about some of the challenges, and I suspect one of them will be human resources in terms of getting a lot of people on board to do this exercise. When we come back after the break. Welcome back to Face It and Fix It. We are speaking with Ingrid Thompson, Chief Archivist, Department of Archives. And before the break, I mentioned that we will talk about some of the challenges, and I assume, based on what she's telling me and all of this work, if manpower may be an issue. What are some of the challenges that you are experiencing in this department?
Well, as you rightfully said, manpower, but we're actually going through an audit of the department and looking at institutional strengthening. Um, because archivists are few and far between. I can probably count them on one hand within the entire island. So even encouraging young persons to become involved in archives, even in conservation, um, be be interested in the conservation field, and that has a scientific background because you need to get a scientific background in terms of chemistry, but you need to understand how the ink interacts on the paper and the type of paper and that sort of thing. Then we also have our technical side of it, digital preservation. We know that we're creating a lot of digital documents, but we need to preserve them in whatever format. For instance, even this program here that you're doing, you would want to archive that, and not only archive but also to preserve those things, because our department is responsible for preserving the memory of our country. When we're all gone and our memories are not here any longer, we have to consult the documents to know what would have happened before. So our main responsibility really is to preserve the memory of our country. And we, in terms of records management, that is a whole another aspect of the work that we do. But as I said, we're looking at institutional strengthening of the department, and trying to get persons interested in this field of work, and being able to fulfill our entire mandate as laid out in the Archives Act Cap 19B.
So then CBC, for example, not even only just this show. I remember being in a show when I was 7 years old in 1977 on CBC.
Mm-hmm.
I used to dance with, it was called, I can't remember, Junior Talent actually, with Vic Brewster. So even people like CBC, agencies like CBC should more or less preserve that. And the process of preserving that would be different because we're talking about that old tape.
Yes.
But again,
Yes.
that comes
Yes.
into play where someone needs to know how to handle it,
Yes.
clean it.
Yeah. So. Yes,
So
that
that
is
happens
so.
with you
In
too as
terms
well?
yeah, well, in terms of, well, we mainly have paper and microfilm. We have not started to preserve digital records as yet. But even in terms of training, we keep harping on training and updating our skills and so on. So to have persons on island who can actually advise on how to preserve these records in their different formats, that is what we also need, because I mean, we were trained so long ago in terms of fashion. I was trained in 2000 and this is 2022 now, so a lot of things would have changed
You,
until
you
now.
would have to archive that training because it's how old it has been.
Yes, 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 so I have to
So a lot has
archive that
changed
training.
and techniques are different because
Yes, yeah,
as everything
yeah.
changes.
Yeah, the basic foundation skills and so on in terms of the principles of archiving and so on is the same, but the issue of digital records, that is a challenge for our profession, and how quickly, and we do things before even thinking. Sometimes we have emails, we use emails in our daily work, and some people may delete them and do all sorts of things, but we need to be cognizant that those records belong to the government of Barbados, and we should not be deleting them just like that. So we do things without being cognizant of that.
So the Newton Burial Ground, for example, I would believe that you may have known about it, the project that's coming. And what other agencies you would be involved in that would come to you to say, we need some information to make sure we construct X, Y, and Z. Let's take Golden Square Freedom Park, for example, or as I use the Newton Burial Ground that they spoke about that will be coming soon. Will you be connected somewhat? You work with all of these various agencies if they need some of this information, even for CBC, if they wanted to do a segment on something back in the day. You're able to provide that type of information? Or you don't
Yes,
do it that
Joy.
way?
Well, because of issues with staff, but as long as it is another government agency, we try to assist them as much as we could. We usually work very closely with the NCF, with their various projects and so on, in relation to the research part of it. For instance, when we became a republic last year in November, we went a virtual exhibition with, in collaboration with the NCF, of some of our information from 1627 up to 1966. And we do get requests for assistance from other government agencies. You can find information on any subject at all at the archives. For instance, earlier this week, we received a letter from a professor in the USA. She is researching the equine trade in horses between Barbados and the USA in the 18th century. So we have information on all types of subjects, politics, geography, agriculture, science, subjects we have here at the archives.
So how important then is it? Because you said if we don't do this, then our memories are lost. So some people may say, well, I don't want to be reminded of slavery and all these bad things that happened. And how important is it to have it there, accessible, for years and years to come?
I think it's important because not only in terms of providing what information on what happened before, but in terms of fostering our national identity, who we are as a Bajan. What is a Bajan? Who is a Bajan? We're made up of different groupings of persons, mainly African and European, and we need to make sure that we preserve that information. For instance, they had a group of 365 persons who traveled to Liberia from Barbados in 1865. And currently we have a lot of their descendants in Liberia who want to know something about their fortunes in terms of their country and the civil war that they would have had. Their records were destroyed. And Joanna, as you may know, when there's a war, persons tend to head for the museums and the archives and so on to destroy those things first, because when those things are destroyed, who are you? Where is your place in the world? So it's critical for us, a small country like Barbados, to make sure that we tell the story and we preserve that information. So many things would have happened in Barbados since it was settled in 1627. We were the jewel in the crown for the British Empire. And I always tell persons, the USA was a colony at one time too before it became the United States and so on. So Barbados was that crown. Everything used to happen here on this island before it happened in the other colonies and such like.
Well,
And another example is that the meal from going to St. Lucia and St. Vincent and those other Caribbean countries had to first come to Barbados, and then it was dispatched to those other countries.
Well, for me, my takeaway from this is if you don't know your history, if you don't preserve it, all of the problems that we are seeing now in society, we learn from what happened back in various centuries.
Yes.
And we need to be able to pull from that in order to know how we want to improve. I always tell people, you don't live in the past. but you have to make reference to it and keep it alive in order to be better today, so you don't repeat
Yeah.
mistakes, or even take some of what was happening back then and use it now. And use one example, this pandemic. I saw
Yes.
pictures of people back with the what was it, Black Plague that they had that lasted 2 years,
Yes.
and there was social
Cholera.
distancing. Cholera, but there was social distancing and there was mask wearing. Funny enough, that's how they dealt
Yes.
with it. Perhaps it didn't go so crazy because, you know, people weren't traveling, no airplanes, etc. But I looked at that and said, imagine if we didn't have that history, archive that. We wouldn't have anything to reference with the pandemic. A quick question here, have the archives ever thought about having an online registry where citizens can track their ancestry through DNA?
Well, in terms of the output from the digitization program, that is what we are actively looking at in terms of having a database where we can actually research our family history. Because a lot of persons are very interested in that now. So we're actively working on that. The DNA thing, we have to put a bit more thought into that, because you know there are a lot of issues now with where people DNA samples end up, and so on. So we have to put a bit more thought in that when it comes to things like that.
All right, final words, question, what would you say you need in order to move forward to make your agency work a lot better, smarter, faster? Because obviously you have some challenges. So I want your last words to be, how can your request, your wish list as to how you can fix it if you had a wish
Well,
list.
my wish list would be funding, you
Mm-hmm.
know, to buy purchase the things that we need in terms of any equipment, getting things done, and also um, being able to staffing to get the requisite amount of staff to really address the needs, because the archives department is responsible for records management, have oversight for records management over the entire government service, which includes central government, statutory organizations, and so on. And that is something that is a whole nother conversation itself as to what is happening with the records within the different agencies, the impact that our work can have on the Freedom of Information Bill, the Data Protection Bill. Because I always say, if there's a freedom of information that and persons go and request the information, and you cannot find it, you do not know where it is, it may be underneath a stairs. Managing information is very important. It's important to the economy. It's important to us. You know, it would not waste our time, and so on. I hear people complain sometimes they go to other government agencies. They cannot.
Okay, I believe that we've had a little technical difficulty, and that's unfortunate because we wanted to get her back to, because I wanted to find out which ministry this falls under, so that she unfortunately disconnected, but it is definitely a lot of information, and of course her wish list, and I believe it might fall under the Ministry of Innovation, Science and Technology, the Archives Department, and that ministers the Honorable Davison Ishmael, who I believe we will have on this show. Unfortunately, he couldn't make it the last time, but he's promised that he will be here. And we will share that wish list with the minister, funding, equipment, staffing, but unfortunately we got cut off before we can finish everything. So I definitely want to thank Ingrid Thompson, Chief Archivist, Department of Archives. And just listening to her, you must know how important everything that they do to the economy and how things can just crumble in the absence of proper archiving and this information. We'll be back after the break, where we will speak to Maria Holder Small, President, Multiple Sclerosis Association. We'll be back after the break. Welcome back to Face It and Fix It. For me, I enjoy this show every Monday and every Friday, but I actually look forward to the third Friday in every month. As promised, we want to put information about disabilities on the front burner and not just during the month of the disabled. So we have with us today, and I'm very, very happy to say that Maria Holder Small is the president of the Multiple Sclerosis Association, and she is joining me on Face It and Fix It to tell us more about this condition in terms of what it means to her and the disabled community and the wider society. Welcome, Maria.
Thank you, Joanne.
How are you?
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming to joining us. You look
How are
lovely,
you?
girl. You look lovely. You're my favorite color, orange.
Thank you. Yeah.
You're my favorite
30th
color.
of May. We can get there. 30th of May.
30th of May?
For sure.
All right, girl.
Yes.
All right.
So this morning,
Mm-hmm.
I want to say thanks again for having me, representing the Multiple Sclerosis Society
A society.
of Barbados. Yes. And I want to say thanks to the Barbados Council for the Disabled for having this avenue for us to, as affiliates, to come and, share our issues, and not all issues, it's not always gloom and doom, but our triumphs. So this morning, in my capacity, we are here to speak about MS. We call it MS for short. Now, the MS Society will be celebrating their 25th anniversary in October this year. So we've been around that long. We still have founding members within the group. But you may ask, what is MS? It is a chronic disease affecting the central nervous system. So we're talking about the brain and the spinal cord. Now, it can occur when the immune system, and I'm trying to try not to be too clinical. I'm not a doctor, but we walk this road every day. And it's when the immune system attacks the nerve fibers. So picture an electric cord, in your house, and you strip away the white part and you're left with the colored pieces underneath. That is what happens with us. So the myelin sheath is attacked, and therefore we are left then with a whole range of symptoms. And the symptoms may differ from person to person. So we always say there are no two persons with multiple sclerosis that have the identical symptoms.
Okay.
So we all may have the condition, but we all have different issues daily. Now, a lot of us, I would say all of us, would have been working, studying, and doing things day to day, normal day to day issues. However, when MS starts to display itself, we often do not know what the problem is. The testing is a very long and tiresome road, and at the time we only have 2 neurologists here in Barbados. So Joanne, trust me, it is multiple tests you go through, and then it's like a relief. People ask me why I say that. It's almost a relief not to hear that I have this condition, but it's a relief to find out finally what is wrong. I don't know if that makes sense to you.
Yes, of course. I understand.
So we have persons that will be suffering with vision loss. There's something called optic neuritis, where you can go totally blind. Could be one eye, could be both. That is very, very common thing that a lot of persons with MS deal with. You have numbness, you have tingling, you can have paralysis of one side, you have tremors, incontinence. The list is so long. I will encourage persons to go onto our website. It is www.msbarbados.com to learn more about our condition. Now, it was lovely hearing you speak about loving your orange, you being your favorite color. And one thing I want to ask the whole of Barbados is to go orange for MS on May the 30th, which is recognized as World MS Day. We've never pushed it like this before, but we'll be sporting our brand new shirts with our logo, and we're trying to get the message across. You never know the day that someone in your family might be diagnosed with this condition. It doesn't give us a warning sign. It doesn't say, oh, hello, I'm coming. It just comes. So that is what we want Barbados to do for us. You're putting up our posters.
Yes.
And I must say thank you to Janelle Skinner and Rosanna Tudor and Shanice Lane, who came through for us in getting these posters done up, these beautiful posters for us to help spread the word across Barbados. Go orange for MS. No, okay, you go on, Joanne.
No, I'm just saying, I was about to say that Haigh Communications, the company I'm associated with, our colors are orange. That's why I was saying that. Because orange actually means joy, and joy is my name. So that's why I tell you that you're wearing my favorite colors. But I'll let you continue because I want to get into some of the, what I call in this morning a wish list. Some of you may or may not know that I was asked to sit on the National Advisory Committee on Persons with Disabilities to help shape the policy chaired by the Honorable Edmund Hinkson, and as well as the Deputy Chair, Carrie Ann Eiffel, and I sit now on that committee. So we will help draft policies to take to Parliament, and of course, in an effort to improve the lives of persons with disabilities. So I'm going to wear two hats every time I do this show because I want people to communicate with me, tell the public exactly what do you need to make your life a lot easier, to make the playing field a little bit more level, and of course we take that information to the committee. So I want to ask you this question. I have a good friend, I hope she's watching, Leslie Walcott. I'm sure you may know Leslie.
Yes, it
Yes,
is.
yes. So, you would not even believe that this is bothering or a problem for Leslie. And all the persons I've met with MS, I find they're always so full of life. But there are challenges. What are some of the things that you would like for society to know, to say, look, I need you to change X, Y, and Z because you're making it difficult for me, more difficult for me?
Well, I'm going to speak on behalf of my MSians who don't display a physical disability first thing. So we have persons in MS who you may see walking without a mobility aid on the day that they're feeling well. Now, fatigue is one of our greatest enemies also. So I think one of the biggest issues is perception, where you might see that person walking, or you might see that person pulling into a disabled parking space. And they get out, they do have their parking ID, but yet you're ready to accost that person because to you they look fine. Or normal as a word we don't use.
Yes, we don't use that. We do quote unquote normal because don't know what that means.
Correct. So then that person now is already having an okay day. It might not be a great day, but it's a better day because every day we get up, we have to wake up hoping that we could do what we could have been able to do yesterday. It is that much of a challenge. So today I might be able to do something, and then tomorrow when I get up, I'm not able to anymore. the condition has progressed. So the one thing that a lot of our MSCNs complain about is being out there and being judged by persons who think that they look fine. That is one. Of course, infrastructure will always be an issue until we find persons who think that instead of building stairs, it makes sense to build a ramp.
A ramp.
And not a ramp with a 4-inch step up at the top, because people do that very, very well. So that is another thing that can make life easier for persons like us.
I want to talk about building too, and the changes, and if people are really adhering to what is required. But when we come back, because we got to take a quick break, let's talk about the infrastructure and even building your own home. Some people don't even consider that they're going to get old or something may happen. We'll be back after the break. Welcome back to Face It and Fix It. We are speaking with Maria Holder Small, President of the Multiple Sclerosis Society. And before the break, we talked about some of the challenges and with infrastructure. I've seen on so many occasions people struggling in wheelchairs to get into restaurants, even to shop, and even in their own homes, because you build a house and it's, and you didn't expect these things to occur, and then all of a sudden you have to make those changes too in your own house. How difficult is that on this national level, and then on a personal level, having to make the changes in your own home?
It is difficult, and especially if you develop your physical limitations after you've built your home. The National Disabilities Unit has been providing ramps for persons with disabilities for a lot of years. And, obviously it is when funds are available, but we have a lot of members who have benefited from that offering from them. We also have Rosanna Tudor, well known, operations manager of the council, who would be willing to offer assessments if you needed advice on developing or changing, redesigning your business or so. For me personally, funny that when my husband and I were building our home, I I was not in a wheelchair. I was still walking with a mobility aid. So we were able to adjust the house plans before. We did that before, sorry. Not thinking, because in your mind, even after you get that diagnosis, you don't think long term. You just think, but I'm one like that who would not have thought of full time being disabled. Just figure, you know what, one day at a time, this will not happen to me. So you talk to yourself, almost repeat a mantra every day. You'll keep walking, so you don't think, you choose not to think down the road, because it's not easy mentally. It really takes a toll on you to know that you can no longer, and it's not only persons with MS, with any disability that we acquire. It's total life changing.
Yes, I mean, you had me there wrapped up in that and visualizing it, because even the elderly, things change, and for me, only the other day, I'm saying that people, if you're building your home and you're a little older, getting that chance, don't bother with the bathtub, because nobody uses bathtubs now, they say, anymore. Get a nice walk-in, or if in this case with a wheelchair, that you can get into your shower easy without having to step up. Wider doors, that's important. Wider doors, yeah. Open floor plan, not too much furniture, just keep it, I thinking that you don't have to wait for something to happen, and even if it doesn't, at least you are prepared and don't have to go and look for more money to go and start making these changes. When you mentioned about the National Disabilities Unit and assisting, I would really like to know what the response is like in terms of the turnaround time to get this done, because I've heard of some concerns of people waiting to get ramps put in, and some delays, and a little bit longer than they would like.
Yes, that is one complaint that a lot of members would have had. There's a new director, so Mr. John Hollingsworth. So we're hoping that things would be, more happening more in a more quicker time, response time. But that has been a major complaint in the past. Persons' names have been on for a long time. Sometimes we do. I know we had a time back when I was the president for the Council for the Disabled. We did have offers from 2 companies to do ramps for persons. And once again, Mrs. Trudeau would have been the person on the looking after that. So you do have, we can ask corporate Barbados to give a hand when it comes to that, because a ramp is nothing hard. To me, it's so simple to do. To me, you can take the time to build steps. You could do a ramp. Even the delivery guys who are taking in the trolleys to businesses,
yeah.
I'm sure that they would love to be able to just wheel the trolley up the ramp. So I'm like, but this makes no sense. There's a well-known complex that was just built there in 6 rows. I mean, just built, like 2022 completed. And you believe it or not, I went to the ATM one day. I cannot get in the ATM. There's a step up to get in the ATM. Now help me let that make sense.
Wait. I live in St. Farlap like you. You kidding me, right? Seriously?
No. So
I haven't been, yes, I haven't been in every, but encouraging me now to go and scout around and draw that to the attention of those responsible and make the changes.
Get into the ATM. And that's unfortunate, because that is a new building, and therefore we need building codes and legislation set where businesses should not be able to build floor in this day and age. Seriously. So that is something that is one thing I would ask you to help in terms of the committee that you have just been elected on, because it is not good enough. And even a lot of the shops on these sites, you have to shop from the door. They all have step-ups in that very new complex just done. And that's only one of many, but what I'm saying, we should not be at this stage now.
Perhaps even listening to that, when people put up their structures, companies, etc., and it open to the public, someone from Town Country Planning, because I would imagine it would have to start there, and any changes. So let's just say that you were told, listen, you got to make this flat, and you didn't. Somebody should always check, come in and check if you are sticking to the plan. Because if they did not alter the plan, it means that someone who should have known better should have never approved the plan in the agency that normally approves. And so we got to start with the agency, which is, and I believe is Town and Country Planning.
Yes, it is.
Town and Country Planning has to be held accountable for all of these structures that are going up, to say, are you building to code? Have you built with a ramp and accessibility for the disabled community, et cetera, et cetera. And I think though, honestly, Maria, you know, we sit down and we talk and we talk and we talk and we beg and we beg. And you come back again and you talk and you talk and you talk and you beg and you beg and you're trying to figure out, you know, and then we see people taking pictures and saying this, and then 2 years later, I'm back here and I'm asking the same question, you know? So for me, even being in that committee, I actually was very honored too, because, you know, as I said, you know, everybody knows I have my daughter Sky and she has Down syndrome, and I said, look, a couple of years ago, many years ago, I actually said, Lord, I really wish I could be a part of something that could change policy, that I will have a say and it will actually happen. You're part of the town, huh? I put that out there in the universe, and in 2022, I am on the committee to help make that change. But I ain't about all the talk. That's the thing, is I can't deal with that. And I being very straight and being real. I'm tired of it.
Well, I'm very glad to hear that, because I will say on national TV, a lot of the times, a lot of these committees are just about talk.
Mm-hmm.
So what you said before, it means something, because if you're not about talk, then maybe we'll see action. But a lot of the time, people, we sit around these tables and there's no effective change.
Mm-hmm. I can tell you my experience.
Same thing long after.
Yeah.
I see back at the same thing long after. It's just this circle going around and around. Committees come, all the members change, chairpersons change, and then where have we gotten? The council had to undergo collecting signatures in 2016 in order to present it to the Prime Minister at that time. That is how we got the legislation for the disabled parking space. That should not be. It is not a want. It is a need. That is how we got it. We collected over 12,000. I'm talking about people in wheelchairs and with mobility issues. Any kind of this going out to different places to collect signatures was to present to the then Prime Minister.
Nothing. You see, and that's the thing. I mean, once a man, twice a child is what I said earlier. So it's not about people, young persons with a disability. If your mother, your dad, blessed to live to 18, 90, probably gonna be in a wheelchair. You know, obviously things change. So it's not only about young persons with a disability or who born with a disability. As you said, you didn't think in a million years this would be you. You know, the people say today for me, tomorrow for you. You don't know.
Right.
And this is why it bothers me a lot, where people don't take this seriously, because you don't know what will happen to you. You don't. And so you're arguing, you're fighting, you're begging. Look, a classic example, because I know we got to wrap up, but I got to get this one off my chest. I know a gentleman, he's dead now. He was waiting for his ramp. Amputee, wheelchair. Poor guy, you know, and he needed to retrofit where he was living in a housing area, where, you know, the terrace, what we call the terrace lots, government houses, upstairs and downstairs. That man, unfortunately, because, I mean, I don't know what it's like, but I understand that, you know, you're just a recent amputee, you get up, fell on his stubs, and was trying to get up these stairs to his bed, had no help, and died because he caught an infection he didn't have a chance to heal. So we could forget retrofitting, ramp, and whatever. Nobody visited him, even though letters were sent to the relevant agencies, and he died just like that, without anybody even lifting a finger to do anything. So it is those stories that I believe really we have to push. And I mean, I am very respectful and I will continue to do that, but I'm going to be very forceful because, you know, I can't take it anymore, truthfully. I really can't take the rhetoric. I can't take the talk. I can't. So when you tell me something and I don't see the result, you're wasting my time next, if you understand what I'm saying, you know? So final words at you. I don't mean to be like, so whatever, but you know how, I think you know how we all feel.
Yeah.
I've been on the Council for the Disabled, PRO, years ago.
Yeah.
You're begging and you're being treated like if you're less than human because what? You know, we contribute to society. And I say we because my daughter's challenged, right? Part of this. We do everything we can. We are helpful. We can still work, albeit it may not be the type or whatever. We matter. So we contribute. We pay taxes. And people don't take us seriously. Final words at you.
All right. So this Monday coming, 23rd, we will be at Golden Sands. That's when we are having our media briefing to push the slogan. Leading up 7 days after that, which is the 30th of May, we'll be at Pebbles Beach. That is all the members wanted, a sea bath on that day. So World MS Day, we are pushing Go Orange for MS. Go Orange with us. Support us as much as we can, as you can, and listen out for us. This is just the first of many to come. We have many members waiting to be out there, so we are really going to be pushing the awareness for our society to grow from strength to strength. So I thank you
Amen.
once again, Joyanne, for having
Maria,
us.
I thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. You know, you have an open door here, a forum
Thank you.
the third Friday in every month. As promised, you want to come back again, you come back as many times as you like. And I just remind me, because I'm going to get in contact with you because I want to see how best, you know, we can facilitate a little bit more behind the scenes, because not everything that has to be publicized.
So I'll give the website again. It's www.msbarbados.com. And the cell number is 285-5884, or my number, 252-4246. And you have our website. They're rolling up.
Yes.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much. Thank you again. All right, Maria,
Pleasure.
we'll look forward to seeing you again on this show. And I believe we will be in touch even all in between. This is
Thank
the
you very
beginning.
much.
Let's call it that. This is the
Yes.
beginning. This is the beginning.
Yes. Thanks.
Thank
Thank you
you.
again.
We'll be back after the break. We're going to talk climate change. We'll be back. Welcome back to Face It and Fix It. I'm going to take my time to introduce the next set of guests from GCF and the University of South Florida. So let me start first. Professor Dr. Maya TROTZ, professor in the Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering, College of Engineering at the University of Florida, is joining us. Also, we have Dr. WAINELLA Isaacs, PhD graduate, Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering, College of Engineering, University of South Florida. And of course, our friend who's always here, Dr. ELON CADOGAN, GCF National Project Coordinator, Caribbean Community Climate Change Center, and Dr. Kirk Douglas, Director of the Center for Biosecurity. Okay, that person is not with us, so let's just end it with Dr. ELON CADOGAN, 5Cs, and that's how we call it. And we kind of shorten it to 5Cs. Good morning, everybody. And as we can all tell, everybody studied very long and very hard in order to be able to make a change in this world. And I want to thank you for taking the time for spending it on studies, because you don't get those types of titles from doing nothing. Good morning.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. I want to start with my friend who we never really met, but I've heard the name over and over again when I used to be back in the days at the Barbados Water Authority. Everybody loves Maya, Dr. Maya TROTZ. And I want to start with you, because we never met, but I know we know about each other. Welcome. And it is my pleasure to finally get to meet you and chat with you in this forum. So Maya, tell us a little bit about what you do as it relates to GCF, 5Cs, and Barbados Water Authority.
Sure, and it's great to meet you also, Joya.
And forgive me, I was Dr. TROTZ, because I say Maya because I hear your name so many times over the years. I feel like if you're family, so forgive me if I say Maya. Dr. TROTZ.
No, please call me Maya, please.
Okay, go ahead.
Please do so. Yeah, no, so I'm originally and have been working and teaching in the U.S. for quite some time, but always looking for ways to reconnect with the Caribbean. And an opportunity came to work with the Barbados Water Authority. It was actually through a student project that I had in 2014, bringing a group of students from various engineering disciplines down to Barbados to work with the student entrepreneurial program SEED at the University of the West Indies that is led by Ayana Young Marshall, who at the time was on board of the BWA. And the students worked with their students, her and Professor Paul Pounder, this is from UE. And we sort of said, okay, we're going to look at a certain area. We were concerned about nitrogen pollution, do a lot of work looking at resource recovery from wastewater systems and looking at it from stormwater. And for those who don't know, so nitrogen, when we have too much of it that gets into our waterways, compromises health and economy. In the surface waters, in the case of Barbados, you might see algae growing close to your shores and so on. A lot of that could be due to increased loads of nitrogen coming in. And also higher levels of nitrogen in your drinking water, not necessarily great for your health also, in particular if you have small babies. So that was sort of the in and the interest. We put the students, we went snorkeling, diving with Barbados Blue in Carlisle Bay, because we said, okay, we're going to look at this watershed area. Walked up and down looking at the storm drains and visited the Barbados Water Authority wastewater treatment plants and also their water pumping stations. And to the students come up with a business plan, and we were there for 14 days. We also worked with a documentary filmmaker, Mr. Russell Watson, who on the first day sort of gave the students some quick tools on how to document and create media based on what they and the students came back and gave a presentation that they wanted to recover nutrients from the wastewater Bridgetown sewage treatment plant, and grow products, grow not food, but grow crops. One of the members of a team, and I'm forgetting her name, but she was a seed graduate who was producing soaps and other products. I had mentioned that a big cost for her was essentially the oils that she used. So the students were looking at various things that they could grow on the wastewater, which is rich with, and of course with water, and to tie into things that she could use to process for essential oils so that she didn't have to import those. We shopped it around, presented it to Dr. Mwanza, who at the time was the general manager at the BWA, and then we took it to Ed, forgive me my memory, I think Ed Clark, who was at Sagicor, and then I think he may have been the COO then. And he, we were looking at, had this perception of using resources that come from what we call wastewater, that there would be this yuck factor associated with it, and so we went to speak with Ed, not only because of his work on the private sector as a commission, but also because Sagicor at the time, I don't know if they still do, owned quite a lot of agricultural land in the St. Lucie area. And the students gave the presentation. I would never forget, it was a Saturday morning, and we're there at SAC's headquarters, and he says, we have a lot of farmers. We spend so much thousand each year, or they spend. How do we get this product to them? And so that immediately sort of put everyone's minds in terms of this reuse, sort of recovery factor. And then, so that sort of led to students now working on how do we get funding to work. And I know Young Marshall was able to get funding from, I think, Massey to do a pilot time. And we never really got off the ground with that. What happened soon after, because of now the relationship with the BWA, we were at a Caribbean Water and Wastewater Association conference in Miami. I think it was in 2015. And the 5Cs were there, and the BWA was there, and the 5Cs, my father was a science advisor there at the time, and kept saying, I'd like to really get in touch with the BWA and Dr. Mwanza, very interested in financing through the Green Climate Fund, which at the time was relatively new, and the 5Cs going through becoming an accredited entity. And Nathan Hart, who was an engineer at the BWA at the time, was giving a presentation on sort of the projects that they'd been doing, looking at PV integration and with pumping status. And some of these were always. And the presentations were amazing. And there was a discussion soon after, and we had some students there also. And, one was Carl Payne, who was doing his PhD at USF with me at the time, but Barbadian, and now back at the University of the West Indies. And there was follow-up with Nathan, and there were other board members who attended that conference. And like within a week or two, I talked to my faculty colleagues, and we funding based on a grant that we had, and we went to Barbados. And I think my dad came too from the 5Cs, and we sat with the board and WA, and decided that we would go ahead and look at putting it in a GCF proposal. And so that's how that started. And it was really...
Well, I can tell you the names that you called. Maya, you might be over there, but you are truly a Bajan in my eyes, because you know so many. But let me just move to Dr. Wainella Isaacs. Welcome, Dr. Wainella Isaacs. A little bit more about yourself and your involvement with the whole project and 5Cs.
Good morning, everyone, and thanks to Joanne for having me. So my participation in this project is coming from the perspective of a student. At the time in 2015, I was happened to be in the same room Dr. Josh mentioned at the Caribbean Water and Wastewater Association conference in Miami. And from there, working as this project came about, I ended up being able to support Dr. TROTZ as well as the engineers at the BWA and colleagues at the 5C in the design of the project. And specifically, we also help with completing feasibility studies for this project, the gender assessment and action plan, as well as the environmental and social impact assessment. um, Specifically for the gender assessment and action plan. This is like so important because the Green Climate Fund, which is the largest climate fund in the world, they're the first fund that makes a requirement that you consider gender as one of your design parameters in any project. So I was looking at how you can look at mainstreaming gender best practices so you can create lasting change in this water sector project. And I guess three highlights from doing that work on the project that I can say have been implemented from the design was that we wanted to make sure that your project terms of reference require subcontracts for local universities. Because when you have these donor agencies doing projects in your country, to make sure that you're able to create lasting educational change, you need to have your local university engaged. So I'm so happy to say that this was able to be done by also subcontracting the University of the West Indies Institute of Gender and Development Studies, the Nitabara unit, who worked for this project also in the realm of creating a certificate on gender mainstreaming the water sector program. And this was actually as a part of this program, this training was done to all BWA staff. So apart from working on the gender components for the design of the project, now my additional work then at the PhD level also looked at the Barbados Water Authority, the personal tank program.
Oh,
So I know Joanne,
my favorite part.
yes.
But let's just take a quick break. We're gonna be right back because we really want to talk about that part of it. That's an exciting project. We'll be back after the break. Welcome back to Face It and Fix It. If you're now joining us, you know, it's GCF Fridays, we like to call it. We talk about climate change. That is our focus. We're speaking with Dr. Wainella Isaacs. We're also speaking with Professor Dr. Maya TROTZ and Dr. ELON CADOGAN. Before the break, we were going to talk about the personal tank program, and I'm going to ask Dr. Wainella Isaacs to continue.
Thanks so much, Joanne. So, since this is GCF Fridays and also or we talk about water and climate change, a project that I think all of Barbados should be familiar is the Personal Tank Program. Um, and I can say, in terms of how my work for my PhD, it was now looking at this amazing intervention that the BWD had put in to help to support communities that were impacted by unprecedented drought conditions, as well as breakdown of the water infrastructure to help people to have access to water when they needed it. Um, we thought that this was a major demonstration of how you build resilience in a country, and as a part of this GCF project, we're looking at how could we already expand on an intervention that is proven by the BWA. So for this project, for the PTP, my part of my analysis was to look at the program structure and governance and figure out how best we can improve this when we're looking to scale up from maybe 300 systems to at least triple the amount. And then also looking at the tank systems that had already been installed across the island. There were at least 300 of these, and figuring out how the systems had been performing. If they were failing in some instances, maybe if there was a seal that was breaking, or if there were any other components that might have been damaged during use, identify patterns of breakage so that we could determine what potential items in the system need to be replaced. And then, so once we're scaling up the project, this information could then inform how we move forward with improving of the design of the system. And this work, all the data that have been collected here, with great support from BWA staff, as well as especially the field staff, who are so crucial in taking me around to visit different sites, as well as to introducing me with the different contractors who were providing post-implementation services, because one of the unintended but good consequences of installing these systems at their home is that you have your small and medium-scale enterprises who are there and willing to support ensuring that you have quality water in their systems there. So I think, Joanne, I'll just stop at that moment.
No, so tell me, okay, so let's talk about this and how it works. So you've been out there getting your research done and data done. The tank is set up, but it's designed for, well, basically resilience. So if there's an outage, there's storage. Basically, the refilling aspect of it lies, well, the key, I believe, is all of the logistics, and because that obviously is going to be a tough one to make sure that everything lines up. Water goes off, tank, there's water in the system, but it can only last so long. Then it can be refilled by the lovely trucks that were provided to the Barbados Water Authority by GCF, I believe.
Yes.
Exactly. So all of that actually is part of the whole package. Is that correct?
That is correct, Diane, and I think the point that you made probably is a good point to hand over to Elon.
So I was about to say, Elon, Dr. Cadogan, all connected, of course. Good morning.
Yes, all connected. How are you doing this morning?
I'm great. Nice to see you. Nice to see you. Hope you had a good little time off or out. You know, you were always working and always out of Barbados. Are you in Barbados right now?
Yes, I'm in Barbados right now.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, good. Okay, so now WAINELLA, because she's my new friend and she says that I can call her WAINELLA. So she's been out and about and all over Barbados to get this information. How important is it for logistics now? You put in the tank, you want to make sure it's the right tank and what are concerns and tweak it more or less to make it better. But when the water goes off, the tank's supposed to continue, I would imagine. That's how it works, to kick in. But the water is constantly flowing through these tanks, so they're constantly being cleaned. And not a case of back in the day in Barbados, you had water tanks. Remember that your water would just stay stagnant, nothing happened, and then somebody would have to try to start the tank. This is not the case. I'm just asking about the setup.
Well, I hear the question with the setup. I actually want to take a little bit further back in terms of the contribution of Dr. Isaacs and Professor TROTZ to where we are right now in terms of the actual design for the systems. What Manella would have mentioned earlier in terms of them, the University of South Florida, assisting us to get to the specifications where, we have, as Manella would have mentioned, the vents, the size of the tube, the size of the pump, which horsepower, what color the tank, which type of filter. All of these things really go into in the back end, or sorry, actually the front end of actually when we do our design and the systems. And Manella would have also mentioned the gender action plan for the project. So even before we even get to the point of actual maintenance and a maintenance plan, which was developed with Dr. Isaacs and Professor TROTZ, it is to ensure that these interventions that we have by the Green Commit Fund does not negatively impact the health of any persons that are receiving these tanks. I guess also want to add that sometime during, Professor TROTZ can also chime in here, but actually having another set of, two students or maybe one student coming down from the University of South Florida. I think that student is a master's student to also do some investigations so that we can report back to the GCF on their performance of the tanks. Regarding on the maintenance of the tanks, so they mentioned something very important. Are these tanks going to have stagnant water inside? No, the way in which the design flow works for the tank systems, it is a direct feed from isolated but direct feed from the Barbados Water Authority's mains. However, there is also a maintenance program. So let's say, for example, you have persons that, let's say, for example, they may have leave the island or go someplace different and they didn't have the water running for an extended period of time. There is a maintenance program in place so that those tanks that aren't being, let's say, for example, aren't being the extreme case, that aren't being used will actually be, cleaned and stuff, so that when we're cleaned, so that if any person has to come and use that water at any point in time, the water is potable and it is safe for consumption.
Okay, I just want to get back to WAINELLA. I didn't share it with my producer because it came through on my personal WhatsApp. What does Dr. WAINELLA Isaacs mean when she talks about gender mainstreaming? Except, they want you to expand on that a little bit.
Okay, thanks, Joanne. So when we talk about gender mainstreaming, it's like we have a project and we need to figure out the project that we are going to implement. It will impact men and women differently. So considering the different needs of men and women from any intervention will then help you identify how you can improve your intervention so that it serves all people how it should do. And when I talk about gender, we're not only just talking about gender, but we're also going to talk about social inclusion. So I know you had the previous guests on as well. So are there persons potentially with disabilities, and do you then maybe potentially have a maintenance system that could support a maintenance plan that could potentially help to support persons who may want to put in such an intervention? Or maybe should the BWA be considering putting in some sort of tanks that probably open to the front where the entrance is lower down, so from somebody who's potentially shorter can get into the system. So it's just considering how different people use an intervention and what are their different needs. So then you design the system in that way to what needs. Give other examples of maybe when you're thinking of putting up a rainwater harvesting system high up. Some people just have a regular ladder you can climb up, but maybe a woman might feel a bit more comfortable climbing up a stairs to get to a higher level. So it's considering some of these different ways in how you use an intervention. So I think that's like the simplest way I can describe when we say gender mainstreaming. It's just considering how men and women use systems differently.
Fantastic as it relates to the project. But I got another question. I believe Professor TROTZ might want to take this one. The definition of vulnerability and the importance of vulnerability to this project.
Sure, and I would just add on the gender mainstreaming that it should go across all aspects of the project. So in terms of economic impact also, so who is contracting and are you actually creating jobs and income that benefit both men and women in an equitable way? And many times we find for infrastructure projects that that is not the case. And so things are integrated into this program to that how do you actually increase the training so that both men and women can equally participate in the jobs that might be created. So for the water systems, WAINELLA spoke about maintenance, and the idea of building a culture that looks at, this resilience of the water sector and becomes economically involved in it also. So are there companies or organizations that come and test your water? Are there or that come and clean your water? How entrepreneurial in Barbados and actually in many places in the world. We talk about vulnerability and say for the personal tank program, looking at things like persons' access to water, ability to afford water, and in terms of selecting persons who would benefit from the tanks that are being funded by the GCF, there would be criteria that one looked at. WAINELLA talked about looking at persons from who were classified as disabled, households that have young children, right? That have increased needs, for making sure that you have water for the babies and kids, elderly persons, persons who have chronic illnesses that might require, definitely require active clean water all the time. And Elon, I think, might want to add on here. I'm not sure what the final list of criteria that were used to start selecting the distribution of the tanks.
Elon, what we're going to do?
Anything there?
What we're going to do is take a quick break, and then we're going to get right back to Dr. CADOGAN with that answer. We'll be back after the break. Welcome back to Face It and Fix It. We're speaking with Dr. Elon CADOGAN, Professor Dr. Maya TROTZ, and Dr. WAINELLA Isaacs. And we're talking about climate change, water, we're talking about renewable energy, when maybe not right now in this conversation, but we're covering all of that for weeks and weeks and weeks to come, because we normally carry this segment every other Friday. Now, before the break, we were talking about vulnerability and what does that mean, and Dr. CADOGAN, you were going to expand a little bit of what what Professor TROTZ said.
I thank you, Joyanne. I guess I want to start first by saying that we first had to go through a very rigid exercise of coming up with the definition or defining vulnerability and a vulnerable population, a vulnerable household in Barbados, because we understand that yes, although the GCF does have an intervention here in Barbados, that it was not possible to reach all the households in Barbados under this grant portion. We understand that persons are able and free and to go and purchase a tank. I think the new town and country regulations for houses of a certain square footage, and you have to have some sort of requirement for water storage. So outside of that, now for those persons, then how would we be able to, select persons, or how would an independent consult, because it was done independently, outside of the influence of persons at the 5Cs at the BWA, to ensure that we had some persons or candidates that were fed through eligibility criteria. Now, this eligibility criteria, I believe, is what we're talking about here, and it considers some of the factors that we will all discuss this morning. So for example, there was a waiting for persons in a household being disabled, and I also like to link the segments on Face It, Fix It, and we just heard a presentation from someone with multiple sclerosis, I believe it was.
Yes.
So, it's quite interesting to note that these things, that we're not just speaking on Fridays in isolation, but we're actually listening to persons, listening to these communities, listening to people, and they say, okay, well, you know what, I get a lot of water. I'm in a parish that, it rains almost every day, or, whatever. And how can I be able to collect this water? Maybe that person is more suited towards having a rainwater harvesting tank, should they be eligible under the program at all. So location is also one of these things. Also, the number of males to female, the female to female ratio in the house. Are there children who have any disabilities? And I always go back to that example from 2019 when it was first brought to my attention that, someone who has a mental challenge or a mental disability, not having water can throw off an entire day.
That was 2018. 2018.
2018, yes,
2018, early 2018 at the Derek Smith School. You were present, and you had talking about 5Cs, and I remember that clearly because it was the headmistress at the time, the principal of the school, and she was right. But I'll let you continue to what you learned from that, because as a mother, I can tell you, yeah, we need water every day. It disrupts our lives if we don't get it because of our children. Carry on.
And then, just to understand that, not having, water for the first, let's say from between the hours, for example, of 6 to 8 a.m., how that could impact the lives of some of these students who have to go to school, who already have their own challenges in their own very unique way. So, all of these factors had to be considered in terms of when the independent consultants did their ranking, and when they gave us the eligibility criteria based on the demographics, of course, in Barbados, all of these different socioeconomic factors. All in all, the weighting was an extremely rigorous criteria, but we wanted to ensure that we utilize the grant portion as best as we could for those vulnerable populations and those vulnerable households.
Okay, I want to ask you a quick question about food security, though, and the component. There's a food security aspect of the project. You want to tell me just a little bit, because we had the Caribbean Environment Youth Network that we had together at the symposium, but I want you to just mention, if you can, about the food security element of the GCF project.
So I'm glad you actually mentioned food, because a lot of people look at this project and they see the installation of 4.5 megawatts of PV. That's component number one. This project is actually it has a WEF nexus, which is the water, energy, and food nexus. I also want to include health as well. I'm going to mention food security. So take an example from component 3. Which also is assisting farmers in Barbados with their rainwater harvesting, which is supposed to assist them in providing adequate water to their crops. Right now, we're in the north of the island, and then we're going to go further south as we, as things progress, as we roll out and implement this project. So basically, we just want to ensure that we are able to touch at least 800 small farmers in Barbados, and to assist them not only in having a rainwater harvesting tank to support their crops, but also to educate them on ways that they can conserve water, ways that they can, reduce plant transevaporation. There are different mechanisms that can be used to assist the farmers when it comes to water and energy. So that's what we want to do in terms of our contribution to the farmers in Barbados, not only to provide the tank, but also to provide the training for them to be able to manage or effectively manage or better manage their water resources.
Well, so here's some good news for everybody. We may not start today because we can't break for callers, and people have been messaging me about these trees that I'm going to put them up on the screen, everybody. Just remember, GCF 5Cs will be here every other Friday. But if the producer can put up some trees on the screen, I believe we have a lime tree, a guava tree. I'm hoping that they can get it up on the screen because I want to tie into what Elon just said. And they're not labeled, and I'm not a tree expert, but I can tell you that we got to give away, we've got a lime graft tree, we've got a dwarf seedless lime tree, we've got sugar apple, a dwarf golden apple tree, and a bay leaf tree that we are giving away. We wanted to give it away today, but we were running out of time. But here's how we're going to do this. Every other Friday, when we are featuring GCF 5Cs on this program, we want you to call and answer a question about climate change pertaining to what 5Cs has been doing in this country, and if you do your research in the wider Caribbean. We're also going to look to give away some renewable energy in terms of the panels, solar PV system, and there's another person who wants to donate something called a Evo bundle, but we'll get that information to you obviously as the promotion starts. So this is just a teaser. So I wanted to announce it here to let you know that on this program, everything pertaining to 5Cs, GCF, we want people to call. We want to encourage people to do backyard farming and tie it in again with the Caribbean Environment Youth Network that has a big program on that. And if people can answer questions pertaining to who's 5Cs, GCF, what are some of the projects they're doing, they're going to get some of these trees. And might I add, dwarf trees, they don't need long before they start bearing. So I know people in Barbados will be rushing to get some. And of course, you will be able to pick them up from New Horizon Nature's Bloom Inc. At Sky Mall. So what do you say to that, Elon Cadogan, Dr. Cadogan, and to our guests?
I first want to say this is thanks for the sponsors who be able to make this possible, for us to be able to, help the persons who listen to us every other Friday talking about climate change and actually, try to do some of these things at their homes, And I am hoping, and I don't want to say too much, but I know that there are some other things that are going to come every other Friday as well. But I guess want to say to our guests that this is a small incentive, and please come and listen to our shows, and also get some of this knowledge regarding the climate change and mitigation and adaptation actions that we're doing here in Barbados. So Joanne, thank you very much, and I hope that our listeners and our viewers are really calling over a period of time. Over.
On the CBC TV 8 and the radio stations to get people hyped. And I know the importance of remember the national tree planting that the Prime Minister started, and because of COVID, we wanted to plant 1 million trees. We felt because of the incredible work that you're doing with 5Cs and the GCF, and it all ties into the environment. It's about water, it's about food security, it's about renewable energy, it's about health. And if we can place those giveaways that are connected to the wider solutions that we're looking for, or at least mitigation, etc. Because I want to see people in Barbados grow their own food as much as they can. And it is a dream of mine, and I said that earlier in the show, I want to see everybody with at least a breadfruit tree and a lime tree, because I went to the supermarket and one lime is $1.39. Call it $1.40. So we got to be able to do things like that. I understand that we have Dr. Kirk Douglas a little late in the show, Director of the Center of Biosecurity Studies, K-Phil campus. Good morning, sir.
Good morning to everyone. Good morning, Barbados. Yes, I am the director for the Center for Biosecurity Studies, and I want to also commend the 5Cs for the wonderful work that they've been doing in Barbados with the WSRNS project, also the 3R Cruise project as well. So wonderful work. I mean, we all know climate change is a really, really dominant threat to us as small and developing states within the Caribbean, but just in general all over the world. I think recent news reports from Pakistan would have recorded probably the highest temperatures that they've
49
seen
degrees Celsius. We heard, yeah.
Yeah, it's
crazy.
Who would think that, you know, people could actually exist in those type of temperatures, but those are the current realities in Pakistan, and we know that what the climate models are projecting for the future, that this is also in terms of temperature increases across the Caribbean, or what we're going to be seeing. So we are actually involved in the WSRNS project, doing training, which we're hoping to start from next month with BWA in terms of sensitizing them to the risk, the biosecurity risk related to climate change and how that's going to impact on water management and also distribution throughout the island. So we want to kind of bring in the multidisciplinary approach to biosecurity, because a lot of persons may not know what biosecurity, perhaps they've heard the term. And actually at the center, we view biosecurity slightly different to what the world, or how the world defines biosecurity, mainly because of the convergence of risks that we suffer within the Caribbean, because you'll be hard pressed to find anywhere in the world where you can get a volcano erupting, where you can have a tsunami threat, also hurricanes with the intensity and severity and frequency that we see in the Caribbean, along with so many other biological threats, all converging all at once. And so we have taken that approach to widen the scope of biosecurity to include climate change. And right now we are actually involved in a research project. We have a student from McGill University who will be working with us on looking and researching climate and wildfires in Barbados, to see the impact on health, the perceived impact on health within communities who will be affected by these wildfires. And we know wildfires are driven by climate change, because as the outside conditions get drier, as we have less total annual rainfall, what the current climate change projections are saying, then we expect that we'll have drier and drier conditions, we'll have drought conditions. And this will stress water availability in a nation that is among the world's 15 water scarce countries. And so with the increase in temperature, the risk for wildfires will also increase. And there are also concomitant risks as it relates to health, and those who are asthmatics, those people with respiratory problems, and then also the potential links to diseases such as cancer. And so we want to delve into that. And we know that also water and fires go hand in hand. So wherever there's a wildfire, you definitely need a fire tender, and the fire tender needs water to extinguish these fires. And this is also coming at a time when our period are within the year, in terms of the season, when the Water Authority would be really stressed in terms of low reservoir levels to actually even supply the normal supply to residents. So we see this as a related area, but one that is really, really necessary for Barbados, and hopefully throughout the Caribbean as well.
Well, we've got about a minute, 40 seconds, but as it relates to the BWA, I'm not sure if they've put any information out there as to what rainfall was like last year or the year before, because that certainly has an impact for 2022. I believe that information is important to share so that we all know what we need to do to prepare. Do you think in 10, 20 seconds, 30 seconds that we're doing enough to sensitize persons about climate change and to take it serious? Because I'm not getting a sense that some people don't even buy into it. What do you think?
Well, yes, I think that the intent is there. I think, though, that perhaps the mechanism could do with some tweaking. Actually, we are about to conduct a climate change KAP survey, national survey for Barbados. We're hoping to do that and launch that this summer so that we can have some information coming from the actual communities and the population within Barbados as it relates to climate change, and how we can then tailor risk communication that will then target the different audiences that are out there in the Barbadian population, because you cannot have a one-size-fits-all communication to each and every person in Barbados. You have to be strategic, just like you would be for marketing, and when you do market segmentation, to be able to understand what your market looks like, you have to do something similar for the population when you want to communicate with them. And that's what we're hoping to do.
Well, okay, we're basically out of time, but I want to thank our guests, Professor Dr. Maya TROTZ, Dr. WAINELLA Isaacs, Dr. ELON CADOGAN, and recently Dr. Kirk Douglas. We will continue our discussions on climate change. We want to talk about all of the great work that GCF is doing and the Caribbean Community Climate Change Center in Belize. They've done amazing work around the Caribbean, and we will then obviously be bringing them back again 2 Fridays from now. But we also know on Monday we will have Brian Payne, the Deputy Chief Nutrition Officer I have here, and the Road Safety Association's Shameen Roland Bowen, and a special outreach for a special child with musician John Rowett. And so you got to join us on Monday to watch that. And if I do have a few seconds, let's put back up some of those trees. We will be giving away every 2 weeks. And as Dr. Cadogan said, other gifts that we will be talking about related to climate resilience. We've got bay leaf, we've got golden apple. We will be giving away dwarf trees. We do have some lime trees. Again, let me repeat, limes are very expensive. I saw limes in the supermarket at $1.39, but it was $1.40 because nobody gives you back a cent. I would encourage you to, if you can plant your own food, do so. So we are starting right here on this show to make sure that we encourage backyard farming, possibly even repurpose the old bins that you had when ProSource brought out those lovely new bins. You don't know what to do with the old bins. Perhaps you can repurpose them. You're going to have to call the show, and you're going to have to answer a question pertaining to climate change and anything to do with the environment in order to get these trees. And you're going to get at least 2 trees. But we've got a couple hundred that we want to give away over the next couple of months and throughout hurricane season. We want to talk about climate change, personal tank program, how important it is, those water trucks that you see coming around, how important that is. I will see you on Monday. God bless. Have a great weekend. My name is Joanne Haigh. This has been Face It and Fix It. Until we meet again.